All right, you guys, I want to go through the second example with you. This is just a better organization of the class structure. It'll especially just really help you if you go into APCS next year, because everything for the last 2/3 of the class is in GUI, so you'll be using this a lot. And just using object-oriented programming in Java, okay? So really we have this main that we don't change at all, right? You can give it a title, but other than that, you're making a JFrame. We called it frame. You're making a JPanel, which you're calling canvas. And then this just simply puts the canvas into the frame and then puts it all together with a red X mark up at the top corner and makes it visible for the user. So this just puts all together. So the only thing you would ever really change in here for now, until we get to animations and so on, is just changing the name of the top, right? So I could say, Mr. D loves OOP, right? So that's just object-oriented programming. Okay, let's go to the next one. So here we're doing JPanel Dimensions and Graphics. Notice I'm not directly using color here because I'm using objects and telling them to draw themselves. I'm not actually using the color class here. I am making a graphics object, so I need the graphics. I am setting the dimensions of the window, so I need the dimensions class. And then this class itself is extending the JPanel, so we need the JPanel. Okay, so what we've got is two classes that we're going to make objects of, okay? So that's a background and a tree. Okay, so let's go to those classes first and see what's going on, and then we'll come back here and see how we're using them. Okay, so all the background's going to do is, because it doesn't have a position, it's going to fill the whole frame, right? If we were connecting this, we would actually have it get the dimensions of the window. But for now, for a beginner, it's totally okay to just know that it's an 800 by 600 window because you set that up right here where you set the dimensions. I chose 800 by 600, so I'm going to fill the background with 800 by 600. Okay, so just like in the previous example, you've essentially got 3 lines of code that we put inside of this draw method, right? So we make a color. Right, and that's based on RGB values, so red, green, blue. This is a little red, a lot of blue, and a lot of green, and that comes out to be like a nice sky blue color. And then here we set the pen to this new color. Okay, I called it sky blue, so I set the pen to sky blue. Notice I'm calling on the graphics object, so that's the thing coming in here. And then after we make the color and set the pen color, then we draw a solid that's filled in rectangle, right? And this one is at 0, 0, which is up at the top left of the screen. And then we're doing 800 by 600 because that's the dimensions of the screen. So that's saying starting at the top left, go 800 wide, that's filling the whole width, and 600 down, which is filling the whole height. So that fills the whole screen with sky blue. Then we do those same 3 lines again. Here we're making a grass green, so we're making a color. This is a little bit of red and about half green. So it's going to be like kind of a darker green, not super vivid, bright neon green. And then we're going to set the color here to grass green. Because if we don't set this color, even though we made grass green, the pen is still set to blue. So this would draw as blue, right? So we need to make a color, set the color, and then we're going to fill in a rectangle. So this rectangle starts at X position 0, so right at the left side of the screen, and then it says go down to positive 400. So that's 2/3 of the way down, right? So the height of the screen, remember it's 800 by 600. So this is 600 high. So we're saying start at the 400 mark and then go a height of 200. So that's going to start 2/3 down and then fill the last third. And we're starting at 0x and filling the entire width of the screen. So this is going to end up being the entire screen blue. And then on top of that, we'll draw the bottom 1/3 of the screen in this like grassy green, okay? I'm going to save that. All I did was add some comments. Okay, so again, just to look at this class again, we've got a public class. We are going to use color, right, to make a new color and set a color. And then we need the graphics because we're actually going to use that like quote unquote pen to set the color and draw a shape, right? So we need to import those 2 things. But other than that, it's a bare bones class that has a single method that draws itself. Okay, our tree is going to be a little more complicated because our tree, we want to be able to maybe move it around. We want to maybe be able to start with one tree and make 3 trees or 20 trees, maybe a nice for loop to kind of make a scattered forest. Okay, so in the tree class, what we've got is, again, graphics and color, because all we need to do is make a color, set the graphics pen to that color, and then use the graphics object to draw something, right? So we need those 3 lines. So we're going to use those 2 imports. All our class has is 2 variables and 2 methods, right? Or not even 2 methods, a constructor and a method, right? So we've got 2 variables. The only thing that it's got is an X and Y position. Oh, and if I was being better here, this would be private. If you wanted, you could do it on 2 lines. It doesn't matter which. So we've got an X and a Y as the only variables. And notice if I did it as a decimal, we'd get an error because you can't draw an object at pixel 1.5. It's got to be at a discrete integer location. But if it was a double, like say you wanted an animation to be really smooth, you could absolutely move at a decimal rate, and then you would just cast it back to an integer before drawing. And so I'm going to keep track as an integer right now. But when we get to animations, it'll be pretty common that locations will be in decimals. And then we'll, after all calculations are done, then we'll just draw it at a rounded pixel value. Okay, so we've got an X and a Y position. Here, we simply have a constructor that sets up the position. So I did an X capital L for the local copy of X coming in. So we set these up. And then we have a custom draw function that does the same thing. Hands over a graphics object so we can draw on the same JPanel as the MyPanel class. Make a color, set the color, draw the shape, right? And this is going to draw a tree at X, Y, okay? So let's go back over to MyPanel and see what's going on, okay? So in the MyPanel class, which is really just a JPanel, okay, it's extending it. And all that means is we've essentially take the whole pre-made JPanel class that we imported, and we're adding a little bit to it, okay? So essentially, we copy and pasted the whole JPanel class right here, okay? So JPanel class, all the stuff is here, right? And then we just added this, which is our own stuff to the class, okay? That's what extends means. All right, so here we go. We make it, or we declare an object of the background class and an object of the tree class. But we can't set it up right here, new background, because this is just setting up and declaring an instance variable, but no code here is going to run. Okay, this is just saying these are the variables that will exist for this class when this class is instantiated. But we can't actually run code outside of a method here. Okay, so we've got a background object and a tree object. So when are we going to instantiate them? Well, we'll instantiate them when this class itself is instantiated. So whenever one of these MyPanels is made, it'll set up all the objects, right? Like a chain reaction. So over here, when we say instantiate the JPanel, called, that's my MyPanel class, when we set this up and we call this constructor, then the JPanel sets up all of its objects. So it says, okay, the background, make a new background, the tree, make a new tree, and here's a position. If we wanted, we could have more trees. So here's T2, T3. We could say, here's a second tree that's a new tree, and let's say it's, I don't know, let's look at how wide this tree is. So this tree, it's usually the top is the biggest. So it starts at X and is 100 wide, okay? So then let's go back over here and let's say if we did at 200, they would be touching, right? The two crowns, the tops of the trees would be touching. So let's go 250. We'll keep it at the same Y value. Let's do T3 is a new tree, and let's do the same thing. Let's move it 150 to the right, so 400, 250. So now we've set up 3 trees. This just sets the dimensions of the window, just like the previous example. And then this one, so when it calls paint component automatically, we want to tell it to draw all of our objects, okay? So I'm just going to copy and paste this. We've got each object, we're going to tell it to draw itself. And the nice thing here is because we've got this nice object-oriented view, each of these objects is its own, or each of these trees is its own object with its own X and Y position. What that allows us to do is when we start animating, we can say, hey, tree 1, move a little to the left, right? And now we move it a little, redraw the screen, and all of a sudden the tree's moving, like live on the screen, right? Whereas if this was just a static, I could draw everything in one class, terrible coding practice, and I get the same picture. But then when I try and extend it, right, I try and go to a little further with the project, I'm like, oh my God, now I have to rewrite everything. And what that's called is technical debt. So when you borrow time from the future, essentially, say, I'll take shortcuts now, and it'll make anything I do in the future take even longer. You're borrowing time from the future, which later you'll have to pay back when you try and add. You're like, oh my gosh, instead of being easy, this is going to take me hours to rework. And then you just get frustrated. So better to do the good habits at the beginning. All right, so let's see how this works. Let's save it. I'm going to open in CMD. We're going to Java star.java to compile everything. Oh, I did not mean, I meant Java C, compile everything. And, oh, and we didn't put a semicolon on our trees X when I moved it to 2 separate lines. So let's go back in there. There we go. Now we're going to Java. We're going to run the main. And there we go. There were our 3 trees. So we drew the background first. Notice that when I did it, a common mistake is accidentally in the JPanel drawing the background after. So if I draw the background after and save it, again, I can't type here, so I got to Control C to close that. If I recompile, whoops. If I recompile it and then run it, now we're drawing the background last, which means it's over the top. So our 3 trees are still there. They're just behind this one big drawing of the background. So I just wanted to show you that's a common mistake. Let's go back over here. Now I can just close this window, which gives us access back here on the console. And now we have this amazing drawing. So this is a good start to drawing 3 objects that are semi-complex for our drawing this week. So this one already has a 1 background, right? It's made of a blue and a green rectangle. And then 2, it has a tree, right? So these are 2 different objects it's got. So you would just have to add 3 to this. So maybe you'd add like 2 circles up here that would be the sun, like maybe an outer yellow and an inner orange. I've seen that. That looks really nice. You could add some some white ovals up here, like maybe 3 or 5 together, make a cloud, and then you could have a couple clouds. So that would already be 4 objects right there. And then maybe you put some grass in here or some rocks. I like, one thing you could do for rocks is you could do like a full oval in gray and then draw over the bottom half of it with green. And so you get like a top half of a rock. You could do a little pond here. You could do, I mean, all sorts of things, right? People do a moon, stars, birds in the sky. So anything you want, really just have fun with this. And it doesn't have to be a scenery. It could be a city block. It could be a bedroom. It could be, anything you want to draw. All right, you guys, good luck.